Ladies and gentlemen, today we are not gathered to speak about disease in a cold clinical sense. We are here to reflect upon the most precious faculty of the human being, the mind. Dementia is not simply a diagnosis in a medical book. It is the erosion of identity, the slow unraveling of the very fabric that makes you who you are. And it does not begin when a doctor declares it. It begins in the unnoticed moments of forgetfulness, confusion, and disconnection that quietly creep into daily life. The first sign is memory loss that disrupts life. Not the ordinary misplacement of keys or forgetting where you parked your car, but the kind of forgetting that disrupts conversations, relationships, and decisions. This is not about the triviality of absent-mindedness. It is the brain signaling that something essential is slipping. The second sign is difficulty in planning or problem solving. When the ability to manage simple tasks, following a recipe, balancing a budget, or organizing your day becomes overwhelming, the brain is whispering that its networks are losing harmony. This decline is not random. It reflects years of stress, poor nourishment, or neglect of mental exercise. The third sign is trouble completing familiar tasks. Imagine suddenly forgetting how to operate a device you've used for years, or getting lost in a neighborhood you have walked for decades. This is not just forgetfulness. It is a fracture in the bridge between knowledge and execution. The fourth sign is confusion with time and place. Time is the anchor of human experience. To lose track of days, seasons, or even your own location is to begin drifting in a sea without a compass. It reflects not just a weakening memory, but a loosening grip on reality itself. The fifth sign is challenges with vision and spatial awareness. This is not simply about eyesight, but about perception. The brain translates Esion into understanding. Misjudging distances, failing to recognize faces, or struggling with reading is a sign that the deeper processing centers of the brain are faltering. The sixth sign is problems with words. Language is not only communication, it is thought itself made visible. Struggling to find the right words, repeating phrases, or losing track mid-conversation shows how thought is breaking apart before it can reach expression. The seventh sign is misplacing things and losing the ability to retrace steps. This is not clumsiness, it is disorientation in one's own mental map. It is as though the mind has dropped breadcrumbs in the forest, but no longer remembers where the path began. The eighth sign is poor judgment. When once sound decisions are replaced by impulsive or risky choices, the wisdom accumulated over a lifetime becomes clouded. The mind, once a guardian, now betrays itself. The ninth sign is withdrawal from work or social activities. When the brain struggles, people instinctively retreat. They avoid conversations, hobbies, or gatherings, not because they no longer care, but because the effort to engage becomes exhausting. This withdrawal is not laziness, it is quiet suffering. And finally, the 10th sign is changes in mood and personality. The person you knew begins to fade, replaced by anxiety, suspicion, or apathy. What we call personality is deeply tied to brain function, and when that function falters, so too does the essence of self. My friends, these 10 signs are not merely warnings of dementia. They are reminders that our minds are fragile, yet profoundly shaped by how we live. Dementia is not punishment, but consequence. It asks us, did we nurture our bodies? Did we manage stress? Did we nourish our minds with learning, curiosity, and connection? The real message today is not fear but awareness. For every step of decline, there is an opportunity for earlier recognition, for lifestyle change, for deeper engagement with life. Dementia may touch the brain, but awareness protects the soul. To understand these signs is to reclaim the power of choice, to live deliberately, to think deeply, and to preserve the very essence of who we are. Dementia does not strike like lightning from a clear sky. It creeps in quietly, almost imperceptibly, weaving itself into the daily fabric of life until the threads begin to unravel. Many people imagine that dementia begins with a sudden dramatic loss of memory or recognition, but the truth is far more subtle. It often starts with small lapses, moments of forgetfulness that are dismissed as normal aging, occasional confusion that is brushed off as fatigue, or difficulty focusing that is attributed to stress. The danger lies in this dismissal. When we label these early signs as harmless quirks of getting older, we allow the disease to progress unnoticed. By the time the changes are undeniable, the mind has already surrendered much of its ground. The first keynote in understanding dementia, therefore, is awareness that it rarely arrives suddenly. Instead, it silently establishes itself through faint warning signs, waiting for us either to ignore them or to recognize them as signals demanding attention. It is important to understand that the human brain is not designed to fail without reason. Memory lapses, disorientation, and confusion are not inevitable consequences of growing old. They are symptoms of deeper processes within the brain. Just as cracks in a wall indicate strain beneath the surface, the early signs of dementia indicate that the brain is struggling to maintain its balance. When someone forgets the name of a familiar street, misplaces an object in an unusual spot, or repeats a question within minutes, these are not trivial accidents. They are whispers from the brain that something fundamental is being disrupted. If we treat them as ordinary inconveniences, we risk allowing those whispers to grow into silence. We must also recognize that dementia does not simply attack memory, it attacks the continuity of self. Every small sign, the inability to follow a conversation, the hesitation to perform a routine task, the confusion between morning and evening erodes the bridge that connects the past to the present. A person does not lose memory in isolation, they lose connection to the story of their own life. To ignore the early signs of dementia is to ignore the gradual fading of identity. This is why it is not enough to view these changes through the lens of medicine alone. We must also look at them through the lens of psychology and philosophy. What does it mean when a person begins to forget their own experiences? What does it mean when the mind can no longer anchor itself to time and place? These questions remind us that dementia is not just a disease of the brain, but a disruption of existence itself. The first keynote, then, is a call for vigilance. It urges us to listen to the subtle cues our minds give us and not dismiss them as harmless. Dementia does not begin with catastrophe. It begins with the small, quiet erosion of cognitive stability. By paying attention early, we do more than detect disease. We preserve the integrity of who we are. The human mind is often mistaken for nothing more than a storage unit for memories, a vast mental filing cabinet where facts, names, and experiences are kept until retrieved. But the truth is far deeper. The mind is not simply a place where information resides. It is a living reflection of the life we choose to live. Every thought, every habit, every lifestyle decision we make leaves an imprint on the brain. Over time, these choices shape not only how we feel, but also how the brain functions. Dementia, in this sense, is not just a disorder that arrives without cause. It is often the long echo of years of choices. Choices about nourishment, rest, stress, learning, and connection. If the mind appears to weaken, it is because the foundation upon which it has been built has been strained, neglected, or eroded. Consider the way stress operates. Chronic stress floods the brain with chemicals that over time damage memory centers and impair focus. Or take the role of nourishment. A diet heavy in processed foods, sugar, and toxins slowly robs the brain of the fuel it needs to maintain sharpness. Even inactivity plays a role, for a mind without stimulation, without challenge, begins to atrophy just as muscles do when they are never used. Each of these factors may appear small in isolation, but together they weave a powerful story, one in which dementia is not simply a thief in the night, but the cumulative result of years of living out of harmony with what the brain requires. And yet there is another side to this truth that brings hope. If the mind reflects the life we live, then it is also within our power to cultivate habits that strengthen it. When we choose to learn, when we feed curiosity, when we engage in meaningful conversations, when we exercise the body and nourish it with real food, the brain responds. Neurons build new connections, pathways strengthen, memory, focus, and an awareness are preserved. In this way, the mind is not just an organ waiting to decay, it is a dynamic system constantly shaped by the choices we make daily. Dementia, therefore, is not merely about the unavoidable passing of time, but about how that time has been spent. To see the mind as only a memory machine is to miss its profound role in human existence. The mind is the interface between body and soul, between thought and action, between who we were yesterday and who we are today. When dementia begins to take hold, it is not only memory that fades, it is the living continuity of being. That is why the second keynote urges us to see dementia as a reflection of lifestyle, choices, and habits. It is not an accident that arrives randomly, nor is it an unavoidable consequence of age. It is, in many cases, a message written into the brain by the very way we have lived. Early recognition of cognitive decline is not a matter of alarmism. It is a matter of clarity. Too often, people avoid facing the early signs of dementia because they fear the label, the stigma, or the burden of the unknown. They tell themselves that forgetting names is normal, that misplacing objects is harmless, that struggling with focus is simply the result of a busy life. And in some cases, these excuses may be true, but what if they are not? What if those subtle lapses are the first indicators that the mind is losing its grip on stability? To recognize cognitive decline early is not to surrender to fear, it is to step into awareness. Fear denies, but awareness empowers. By paying attention to the signs, we open the door to intervention, to change, and to the possibility of preserving what is most valuable before it slips away. Consider the psychology of denial. The mind resists bad news, preferring to maintain the comfort of normality. We prefer to believe that tomorrow will look like yesterday, that the rhythms of life will continue unchanged, but reality does not bend to denial. If the brain is faltering, pretending otherwise does not protect it. In fact, it accelerates the loss by wasting precious time. Imagine someone who notices their vision is blurring but refuses to see a doctor because they fear bad news. The delay does not save their sight. It only increases the damage. The same is true with dementia. Early recognition is not about labeling someone with a disease. It is about protecting their remaining strength and giving them the chance to adjust their life before more is lost. At a deeper level, early recognition is also an invitation to transformation. It is a reminder that the way we have been living may not be serving the mind, and that change is necessary. Perhaps it means adjusting diet, reducing stress, exercising more, or rekindling intellectua. Curiosity. Perhaps it means reconnecting with loved ones, engaging in social life, or practicing mindfulness. Whatever the form, recognition turns a vague unease into purposeful action. Instead of drifting passively toward decline, we take the helm and steer the course of our lives more consciously. Philosophically, this point reveals something profound about human existence. We are not victims of decline until we choose to ignore its signs. The warning signals of dementia are not enemies to fear, but guides to listen to. They are the body's way of saying, pay attention, something needs care. If we see them through this lens, we can respond not with despair, but with responsibility. Early recognition does not guarantee reversal, but it guarantees awareness. And awareness gives meaning to action. It transforms the narrative from one of helplessness to one of courage, wisdom, and intentional living. Each warning sign of dementia is not just a medical symptom listed in a textbook, but a mirror reflecting the deeper connections between body, mind, and soul. To notice these signs is to witness the way our entire existence expresses itself through the brain. When someone forgets a name, struggles with time, or loses interest in conversation, it is not an isolated glitch of memory. It is the manifestation of a larger story, one shaped by stress, by diet, by relationships, by purpose, and by the choices that accumulate over a lifetime. To reduce dementia to a mere medical condition is to overlook the profound truth that every cognitive symptom is also a reflection of how interconnected our lives truly are. Think about memory itself. It is not stored in a vacuum. It is nourished by oxygen from the blood, protected by nutrients from food, sharpened by learning, and supported by emotional stability. When memory falters, it is not only neurons failing, it is circulation, nourishment, and mental stimulation all showing their influence. A person who lives under constant anxiety, for example, produces stress hormones that damage memory centers. Another who isolates themselves may experience faster decline because the brain thrives on human connection. In both cases, the symptom of memory loss is not random. It is the visible surface of an invisible web of interactions. This is why dementia cannot be viewed only through the lens of neurology. It is also a psychological and philosophical issue. Psychologically, it forces us to ask how our daily patterns of thought, emotion, and interaction contribute to the resilience of the brain. Philosophically, it challenges us to reflect on identity itself. If the brain begins to slip, what happens to the person? If we forget the details of our lives, do we lose who we are, or is there a deeper essence beyond memory? These questions arise because each symptom points beyond biology. A forgotten word or a misplaced object reminds us that our mental life is inseparable from our physical health, our relationships, and even our sense of meaning. When we begin to see dementia this way, the warning signs transform from clinical red flags into invitations for deeper reflection. Difficulty with problem solving is not just a failure of logic, it is a reminder of the need to continually challenge the mind. Withdrawal from social life is not just fatigue, it is a call to nurture connection and belonging. Even mood changes signal that the emotional world and the cognitive world are inseparably linked. Each sign speaks not only of decline but of opportunity to examine how we live, how we think, how we connect, and what we value. Thus, the fourth keynote teaches us to look at dementia holistically. A symptom is never just a symptom, it is a mirror of a larger truth. To notice these signs is to be given a chance not only to respond medically, but to realign life itself with balance, nourishment, and meaning. Dementia in this way becomes not only a warning of disease, but a teacher that reveals the profound unity of the human experience. Understanding dementia is not merely about cataloging symptoms or preventing decline. It is ultimately about preserving the essence of who we are. Memory, cognition, and awareness are not just brain functions. They are the very fabric of identity. When dementia progresses, what is at stake is not only the ability to recall facts or perform tasks, but the continuity of the self. To lose memory is to lose the thread that ties yesterday to today and today to tomorrow. It is to risk becoming a stranger to one's own life. Therefore, when we talk about dementia, we are not simply talking about disease management. We are talking about safeguarding the human spirit, the unique presence that makes each of us irreplaceable. The essence of self is rooted in more than just intellect. It is found in the stories we tell, the relationships we nurture, the values we hold, and the emotions that shape our days. Dementia touches all of these. When someone forgets the name of a lifelong friend, it is not just memory loss. It is a fracture in the bonds of connection. When personality shifts into suspicion, withdrawal, or apathy, it is not only chemical imbalance. It is a transformation of character that reshapes the person's place in the world. This is why dementia is so deeply unsettling. It does not only alter function, it alters being. To preserve the self, therefore, means recognizing that brain health is inseparable from the way we live, love, and connect. At the same time, the essence of who we are is resilient. Even in the shadow of dementia, a person is not entirely lost. Beneath the confusion, beneath the fading memory, there remains a core of humanity that cannot be erased. A smile at a familiar song, a spark of recognition in the eyes, a sudden gesture of affection, all reveal that identity is deeper than memory. This resilience should remind us that dementia is not the complete erasure of self, but the obscuring of it. To care for someone with dementia is to reach toward that hidden essence, to affirm that their value is not diminished even if their abilities are. For those who are not yet touched by dementia, this keynote serves as a profound warning and an invitation. It warns us that every careless habit, every neglected need of the body and mind risks eroding the foundation of who we are. But it also invites us to live with greater awareness now, to nourish the brain with healthy food, stimulating thought, meaningful relationships, and deep rest. In doing so, we are not merely preventing disease. We are preserving the narrative of our lives, the continuity of our identities, the truth of our being. Ultimately, dementia teaches us to value the fragile miracle of consciousness. To understand its warning signs is to understand that identity is precious, that selfhood is sacred, and that every choice we make either strengthens or weakens the thread of who we are. To preserve the mind is not just a biological task. It is an act of reverence for the essence of the human soul,